Welcome to Monday Motivations, 52 Weeks to a More Purposeful You. We are on, let's see, what week are we on? It is week 20, and our topic today is alignment. And I am really excited to have Carl Rabun. Did I say your last name right?
No, it's Rabun. Yeah.
Rabun.
Yes.
See, I'm glad I always jack up the last name. So Rabun. So Carl and I, we met at UC Davis. We're both instructors there. And from the your reputation came before me actually meeting you in person. And everybody kept saying, as they got to know my delivery style, my training style, they're like, you have to meet Carl, sorry. Carl. I'm all messed up. You have to meet Carl. You have to meet Carl. And then I remember the first time we met, we were like, what's your Myers-Briggs? And we were just like geeking out together. And then you played tennis and I was trying to get into tennis. I will tell you that I'm like into tennis. I finally figured it out how to fit it into my life. And I lost my match last night in our in-house league. And I was going to talk to you about it before we started the recording, so we'll have to talk about that offline. But okay. What is your number? Are you like a?
Well, right now, it depends, on what computer you're in. But like USTA, yeah. I'm a 3.5, but I can fudge it a little bit with some other places and be a 3.0, so I can sandbag a little bit, which is nice.
So we should play.
Absolutely, we should
play.
Yeah,
my serve is not great, but
but
I would love that. And I'm trying to remember what was the court we talked about? Was it in Antelope or?
So I play at Antelope. A lot of what I do is at Antelope Community Park.
Okay.
And they have this little community league where it's $35 a year to join, or $40 a year now. And they have ball machine practices twice a week. And then they have in-house leagues for like $30 a season, right? Which they're pretty competitive and fun and whatnot. I was just up there Tuesday. I'm going back up tonight for practice with a coach, with my doubles partner and all. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And you do singles and doubles?
Right now in the winter, I only play doubles. I have arthritis on my knees. So, I save singles for warmer weather.
Yeah.
Although singles means I have to move around a little bit more. Yeah. So I'm a little lazy. So doubles seems to be like right in my. Well, I just don't have enough time to be able to commit to singles body and conditioning, right? So, and I'll be mad at myself when I lose because I can't keep up, with the stamina. So that's annoying.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'll go ahead and do your formal bio, but I think this initial conversation gives everyone a good taste of what an amazing person Carl is. He's nothing close to lazy. He might call himself that in tennis, but let me just tell you. So Carl Rabun, Ph.D., has over 15 years of experience training professionals in soft skills development, 20 years experience working with government agencies, and over 10 years experience managing teams with various public and private sector organizations. Carl is a leadership and management consultant for Mechanics Bank, UC Davis Center of Professional Education, and Sacramento State College of Continuing Education. His areas of expertise are motivation, customer-client relations, communication skills, personality and generational dynamics, diversity, conflict resolution, team dynamics, strengths-based coaching, and goal setting. And I will say our passions in working with people are just like so aligned, so crossed over. You are an amazing human being. I love the work that you do. In the training world, when you start working with a group of people and you find out who's already been there, what have they already shared and taught, it's just always so rich when I get to work with people that you've already touched their lives at work. And it's so exciting to talk to you about this topic of alignment. So tell me, let's see, alignment. The quote at the top was, "The indispensable first step of getting things you want out of this life is to decide what you want." And that's a quote by Ben Stein. So what are your thoughts about that quote and alignment, and maybe even what you read? If you don't want to talk about the quote, like just what'd you get out of this week's topic?
Well, the first thing I saw Ben Stein, I was thinking, is there a prize at the end of this? Do I win some money, Ben Stein's money or anything, or no? Or I wonder how he said that. Did he say it in his Ferris Bueller voice? The indispensable first step to getting things you want, right? Anyways, so I'm sorry. Along with all those other things, I'm also very much a dad, and I'm a very corny dad. So I like dad jokes, and I love
it.
Corny stuff. Cobra Kai is like one of my favorite shows right now. So, all right, but so in reading what you wrote in the book, and I really love it. It really touched me, and it was funny. Talk about alignment and how we have alignment. When I was thinking about alignment, I'm like, yes, this is the topic I want to talk about, especially as you were talking about meeting people. Some friends and colleagues that we worked with when I first met you, like, you have to meet Corry. You guys would love each other and all this other stuff. So it just,
I knew we would align.
We would totally align, right? Yeah. So, but just thinking about what you're talking about, with the outer life versus your inner life, right? And the outer life is what the world sees, and in your public behaviors and results, right? What you put out there for people to see, what you think, or what your plan is for people to know about you, right? As opposed to the inner side, our inner life, which very often, it's our thoughts, attitudes, motives, and different people have different ways of expressing themselves, right? So, I myself, believe it or not, I'm an introvert, right? If we're talking about Myers-Briggs, ISFP, so I'm a talkative introvert, but only to people that I know.
Well, and I'm an ENFP. So you said you're an INS?
An ISFP.
Oh, ISFP.
Yeah, so I'm an introvert that is sensing. So I use, I very in the moment, and like a lot of data, detail, research, right? And so that's how I take in information. Yeah.
So people watching, some will know about Myers-Briggs and some won't. So let's just jam for a minute on cool. Myers-Briggs. Let's go real quick through each of the four. So okay. You're an I'm an E. So right. The first part of Myers-Briggs is you're either an introvert or an extrovert. So right. How about describe the two? Because people listening, they'll be able to distinguish themselves in that first column.
Yeah, sure. So, there's four dichotomies, right? That were identified, and the E and the I is the first one. And a lot of people think extroverts are people who like to talk. They're social butterflies. They're all out there, right? Introverts are the wallflowers, real shy, don't speak a lot. And it really isn't necessarily about that as much as it's about where you get your energy from, right? Yes. So
how you recharge.
How you recharge. Absolutely. Extroverts get their energy from being around people, mm-hmm. right? And so, when they are engaged in conversation, they light up. When they can be in a crowded restaurant and just enjoy the ambiance and just realize, yeah, this is where I want to be. Concerts, games, whatever, who it is. When they're engaging with people, they have different social groups so that they always, they might have a book club and a tennis club and a wine club and a Game of Thrones club and whoever else it is, right? And they cross-pollinate so that they always have somebody to interact with to keep their energy level up.
Yeah.
Right. Where introverts, they get their energy from within. Mm-hmm. So in engaging in conversation, they actually give energy, right, mm-hmm. to other people, right? And so they have to be able to have that opportunity to regenerate that energy by themselves, right? Which is sometimes a challenge, right? Especially if you have a busy life, right? Where you don't really give yourself enough time to really have that time to recharge. And so that's really the difference, introverts, extroverts. Introverts can be lives of the party. They can be trainers, right?
And that's how you are.
Yeah. It's just, go ahead.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about introverts and extroverts because mm-hmm. even my husband, he is a real introvert. And I mean, it took me a long time to grasp this, but you're right. As an extrovert, even though I value quiet and alone time, say I'm actually getting my quiet and alone time, I'm constantly getting this impulse to call somebody and tell them about what I got from my alone time.
Right.
Where my husband, he can go for hours alone and quiet, and he is recharging. So, yeah.
100%. Yeah, I can sit on my couch and put a pillow over my head all weekend and not have to talk to anybody.
Yeah,
It's
I would be depressed.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Although the older I get, I do really need that alone time. Okay, so with the Myers-Briggs, since we're just doing this impromptu teaching moment, so it's like I don't know if people could see it, but like the categories. So you're either an I as an introvert or an E as an extrovert.
If you want, I have a slide I could share if you want.
Let's just whip it out.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and do that.
Look at us go.
I know. How about this?
People thought they were going to be on the Monday motivation for alignment, but they're going to get so much more bang for their buck.
You guys just have no clue what you're in store for.
Does it let you share the screen?
Let me see if I have permission.
I hope
you can make me a co-host if not. Yes, I can share the screen.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Give me one sec while I pull this up.
Okay, everybody needs to send like Venmo Carl some training dollars, because this is like this is how we make our living, is training and coaching. So thank you for giving this gift to the world.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And while I'm pulling it up, just so just thinking about those inner and outer worlds, when you are an extrovert, very often your heart is on your sleeve, right? And so you let people know who you are, what you're all about. People can read you and know who you are in minutes, right? Whereas oftentimes introverts, we're very much like Shrek, right? We're ogres. And we're not all ogres. Some of us are not ogres. I'm an ogre, but not everyone else. But we're like onions, right? You discover little bits about us as somebody is getting to know you, right?
Yeah.
And so
still waters run deep. That's what I still.
Absolutely.
And I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, you're so mysterious, because it's like he appears to be the social extrovert, but it's like he's also very private and so mysterious and doesn't really just kind of like share it. It's deep.
And then there's people who may know you for years and then they don't realize, some of the things that you actually do or what passions you have, or what, just because introverts aren't necessarily sharing everything about themselves. It doesn't mean that they don't want to. It's just they don't usually necessarily, do that naturally, right? So, okay, give me one sec. I'm gonna show this. So, all right, let me get out of that. Oh, you're gonna cut all this, right?
Yeah, it's all good. People love this stuff.
All right, so here is.
Okay, there we go.
All right.
Ooh, look at you go.
I know, right? So so this is one of the things I do for one of my clients, is I basically teach Myers-Briggs at least once a month. So
cool.
And I'm certified in it, and it's a blast. And I will share the screen, and let me just get rid of these subtitles.
Okay, there we go. That's perfect. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so you have the extrovert and introvert, like we mentioned, right? And so like I said, those people who get energy from being around other people, so they initiate conversation, right? They're looking for ways to share that energy. And the introverts tend to give that energy out, so they need to have time to be able to regenerate, right? So sometimes, and you'll see this normally, and this is one of the things I talk about a lot, right, is when people talk and they ask questions and they go through things with people in meetings or trainings or whatever, they may ask a question. And then, think about the last time you were in a meeting or a training, somebody said, all right, so what do you think about this? All right, so moving forward, right?
I'm like, right, me. I know.
Right. So Corey's got her hand up. Yeah.
And Carl does not.
Right. And if nobody has anything to say right away, it's like we go on to the next thing. Well, studies have shown that it takes people on average 5 to 7 seconds to formulate a question or a comment. And a lot of that is because introverts are listening to what you're saying, right? Extroverts, oh yeah. So you're asking about this. So in this situation, I would say that this happens here. So that would be my answer. That would be that. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with, right? Introverts do all of that internally, right? So when introverts don't necessarily share right away, some people may think, okay, well, people have nothing to say. Silence is weird. It's uncomfortable. I want to move forward.
Yeah. Well, I
Right.
love Susan Scott, who wrote one of her books is called Fierce Conversations, but I think this is her quote. She says, "Let the silence do the heavy lifting." And I noticed this since I've gone back to school, just be sitting in class with different professors. And I'm always used to being the facilitator, the trainer actually in the front of the room. So to be the student, and you just see how other trainers, if they're not comfortable with silence in a training room, so much learning is lost. Like the leader and this is good for like CEOs or even if it's like a volunteer organization. If you're leading the front of the room and you ask the question, make it comfortable for and it won't always be uncomfortable silence.
Yeah.
Because as the leader, you start to realize that's the safety you bring to the room.
Sure.
Where you're like, I'll just give you a minute.
And absolutely, I agree with you. And I start every excuse me, every training or every class that I teach, I start off with this spiel with the 5 to 7 seconds, right? And then I also tell people, on average, how long do you think we usually give people to answer a question?
1 to 2 seconds, 3 maybe.
Less than a second.
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's less. You ask a question, then you go right on. It's like, unless somebody's like, ooh, right? We move forward. And so the expectation is, if people have something to say, please add it. The only bad questions are the ones that are not asked. But if you don't have anything to say, don't feel like you have to say anything. Mm-hmm. Don't feel like I'm waiting for you to answer. Mm-hmm. That silence there is waiting for everyone to be able to digest what was said, process it, and then come up with their answer. Because introverts are not going to give you an answer until they are absolutely ready to give you one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, and they're going to process it. And when I share this, I'll say that extroverts speak before they think.
Yes.
And then they decide what they said, which they edit it after they say it.
Sure.
And introverts, they edit it before they say it.
Absolutely.
But just for the sake of us, sort of staying on topic with alignment. So from a high level, because the alignment is all about our inner world matching up with our external world. And this was very serendipitous how Myers-Briggs came into this. Carl and I did not plan this, but I think the most important part, so in Myers-Briggs, there's these, what did you call them? The 4 or the 8?
They're called, each one of the letters are called facets, right?
Okay.
And they're paired into what are called dichotomies. So each one of the different colors, and by the way, this graphic was created by my friend Joe Gray years ago. I still want to give him credit for that. He's amazing. But it's each one of the colors are the dichotomies. So what the theory says is you are one side or the other. It's all about left brain, right brain philosophy, right? And so what Jung said, who was the father of all personality theory stuff you see, whether it's DISC, Myers-Briggs, true colors, temperament theory, anything like that. What he said was, we're all born with a preference, right? So we lean towards one side of the preference. Doesn't mean we can't use the other. It's just when we use the other, it has to be intentional. It's not subconscious.
So are there 4 preferences, but 8 dichotomies?
So there's 4 dichotomies.
Okay, 4 dichotomies, but 8
different facets, 8 different facets. Yeah.
16 blends.
Right. So depending on what you prefer, all the combinations, right? It's 4 squared, right? So it's 16, right? Yeah. So you have 16 different types of personalities as a result of choosing which one you tend to prefer. And so just walking people through it, right? Introvert, extrovert, ask people to choose which one they're there. Sensing and intuition, right? Do you take in information through your senses, or do you kind of go with your gut, right? And outside the box thinker. Right?
Yeah. So basically, and as we go through this, I mean, Teresita is actually the first person that really taught me Myers-Briggs. And then of course I've done further training on it, but so the way that it made sense to me is starting with introvert, extrovert, and then going down to judge or perceiver. Do you do it that way, or do you start at second? Do you go into the sensing and the N for intuition, which is kind of confusing, but.
So naturally, I mean, I could do it the way that you said it, but naturally, because I'm an S and I go sequentially step by step, I've
Okay.
condition myself to go through it.
Okay, and that's cool. Let me just
yeah.
clarify for anybody watching, when Carl says he's an S, now we're talking about DISC, because, you know, all these different tools, we layer them. Yeah. So Myers-Briggs is a tool, and then DISC is another one. So, well, let's just follow your lead here. So you're either introverted or extroverted, and we went into that in detail. You're either going to be more sensing or more intuitive. So you're an S or an N. N might be confusing, but because I was already used for introvert, they did an N for intuitive. So what would you say the biggest, because I feel like sensing and intuitive can be confusing for people. So how would you explain that in the simplest way?
Yeah, it is. So sensors, they see everything, they process everything through their five senses, what they see, feel, hear, and smell, right? So they're very concrete, they're very grounded in reality. You know, I'll believe it when I see it, is something an S would say, right? Also, they trust history because it's already been done, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what an S will say. We're coming up with a solution. Okay, what has been tried before? How are we going to figure this out this way, right? Intuitives say, yeah, well, this has been tried before, but, you know, maybe it worked, and maybe it worked, but can we do something better, right? So they're going to take in of course they have senses, right? You guys have senses, but maybe you have a spidey sense, you know, that sixth sense. But they say, okay, all is not what it seems to be, touch, feel, right? So let's read between the lines. Let's think about, you know, maybe some other perspectives, think a little bit original. You know, S's tend to like the box that we have parameters and we know the stuff inside the box. The N is like, well, our answer may be outside the box.
And it's funny because, so you're an S and I'm an N. So for me, I make decisions very quickly, but if somebody asks me to explain my logic or, you know, using my five senses, it really is my sixth sense. Like, I'm like, I just know, and it's more like, it's like, I don't need it to be ever have done before. Like, I just know it's going to work.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's just, you know, and
so S is like theory that's been proven. Right. They like data that backs that up. N's will say, you know what, I heard something the other day on the radio, or I read an article about a new trial that's being done. You know, we could try that.
Yeah.
Well, and the S would say there's no data to back that up. And the N says, but that might work. Right. And so
confession, if I barely start reading a book, I will have like 10 other people like, you have to read this book. It is going to change your life. Like, and I will just start sharing it. And I just intuitively know it's the right one. And sometimes I may never ever even finish the book, but I've gotten like 10 other people and they're like, this was perfect. Because I just know. Okay. So T or F. So you and I are both F. So talk to us about T and F.
Okay. So T and the F is about how we make decisions. Right. So the S and the N is about how we take in information. The T and the F are about how we make decisions based off that information. Right. So T's are very logical, very rational. Think Mr. Spock on Star Trek. That's, you know, it's very logical, Captain. Right. So they will make decisions that are fair, objective, right down the middle. Right. No favorites. No, well, I really like this one better. No, this is the right choice. It's the logical choice. And so if something's not logical, they will speak up and say, excuse me, I have a question on this. So sometimes it looks like they're super critical. Like they like to, you know, they're more natural debaters because they will point out things that are wrong. And they'll want to follow through until that is answered, or that other person says, you know what, actually, you're right. So the F, they make decisions based off their value system. You know, what they feel is the right answer. Yeah, logically, this might be the right answer, but geez, this person, you know, if we're going to cut the apple right down the middle, okay, that might be the logical way to go. But you know what? This person needs a little bit more of the apple, right? So maybe we give it to them just because, you know, they're kids and they're so sweet and they're so nice, right? You know, so we tend to be a little more empathetic, a little more compassionate, right? We put ourselves emotionally into the perspective of the person or the thing that we're engaged with, right? So we tend to be a little more of the people, right? And so sometimes you got to watch out because we can be a little accommodating. Okay, well, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
And make exceptions to the standard because I get it, you know, well, this kid in this situation or this, and, you know, this staff member, I know that they don't meet all the criteria, but
Right.
That's definitely okay. Now, when I first learned about the J and the P, this was like, and what I was told and what I've experienced and believe, whether it's proven or not, there's my N coming in, is this is the biggest reason why people can either get along or have severe conflict. Because the judger is the J, which is judgers, they think in terms of black or white. It's very clear, or the perceiver thinks in terms of gray. And I'll finish my little spiel and then you can clean it up and edit whatever I said wrong if I do. But like my communication style, because I'm a perceiver, even when I'm training, I see this show up all the time. I'll tell people, I'll say, okay, we're going to go into a breakout session and I'm going to give you like 5 to 7 minutes. I see all the judgers like completely confused. They're like, is it 5 minutes? Is it 6 minutes? Is it 7 minutes? And, but then myself as a perceiver, I'm not comfortable committing to 5 minutes because what if people need more time? So that's the way a perceiver. So how would you distinguish between a judger and a perceiver?
So it's very similar to that, right? And it's that this is actually the dichotomy that was not Jung based. This was actually created by Myers-Briggs, who the mother-daughter team, Elizabeth Briggs Myers and Catherine Briggs. They're a mother-daughter team who created Myers-Briggs, right? And so they took the work of Jung and then they created this fourth dichotomy, right? And so judges tend to approach the world. This is how we approach the world. J's tend to approach the world very systematically. They plan things, right? So they want to know what's happening next. So you're right on target. They want to know 5 minutes or 7 minutes. We need to be able to plan and to pace ourselves, right? But they're the ones who plan their vacation 6 months, a year ahead of time, right? They're the ones who wake up in the morning with the to-do list in their head already. They're their own best administrative assistants, right? And so they like to start early and they like to close the loop. Right. So if they have something that's due at the end of the month, okay, so if we get this much done today, we get this much done today, we're off this day, but so we plan our distribution of work and we want that to follow through, right? Those are J's, very methodical in that sense. P's are much more spontaneous, much more emergent, right? It says pressure prompted, otherwise deadline driven or procrastinators if people want to really be ugly for us P's. Some people say your P stands for procrastination. I said, thanks. But it's just more of, well, if we plan our vacation a year ahead of time, how do we know if there's going to be a storm or there's going to be another variant or anything else like that? We need to wait and give it some time, right? And P's they're not necessarily as comfortable having that definitive hard answer right there. Also, like you were talking about, 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, well, if something else comes up, then that's important because P's tend to be a little more emergent, right? In a conversation, have you ever had that? I know you've had this in a conversation. You're talking, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, that's a really good point. Let me add to this," right?
Yes.
P's
That's what's happening today. I'm like, that's why my agenda for Monday Motivation, I send to all my speakers, and it's like, okay, here's our kind of 3 loosely organized topics we're going to cover. And then it's like, I get on the call with you. A lot of our speakers, I will, we'll talk for like 10, 15 minutes before, but as soon as you and I connect, I'm like, oh no, let's go. Like, I am ready. Like, let's just let this happen. Like,
we had the whole plan, and then a squirrel got there and said,
I'm like, let's do a training. Okay, but let's, I do have a little bit of some of the opposites of me. So let's kind of loop this back. So we kind of, we're talking about inner life and outer life. Right. And then we brought in, this one of many amazing personality assessments and tools, Myers-Briggs. There's tons of great books out there. What's one book for people listening? Because I know people are going to be like, I want to know more. Like, is there a podcast that you refer to? For typically in the business world, I will reference Type Talk at Work. It's an old book. But offhand, is there anything just for people that are like, keep talking about this? And I'm like, no, we're talking about alignment. Well,
I usually have, I have the books. It's just, they're not near me right
I
now.
know,
But
because we spontaneously brought this up. Yeah.
right. And so Jays would be going crazy because they would be like, I would have the books right on the table, ready to show you. And we're like, wait, hold on, here I go. Right. So but I would say Gifts Differing by Elizabeth Briggs Myers.
Okay.
And
Gifts Differing. And what I'll do is I'll have my gals put it in there. So Gifts Differing. Okay.
And then also Please Understand Me by Kiersey. And Kiersey is actually the person who created temperament theory, which is very closely related to Myers-Briggs. Although people who follow temperament theory, if anybody's here on the podcast, I'm not saying it's the same thing. Okay, I understand what's going on and what happened.
Pull your J out and make a clear distinction, because the perceivers can also have some J.
But Kiersey and the MBTI folks were very, very connected for a very long time. Then there was a falling out. So there is a distinction, right? So but yeah, those are two great books, and they changed my life. They really did. It really changed once when I first took the test. I didn't take the test until maybe 10 years ago. I was 40 years old, right? And so it really helped me recognize, okay, when somebody asks me to do something and I don't do it correctly, or I ask them to do something and they don't do it exactly how I said, my first response is, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with me? Right? I'm looking for blame. I'm assigning blame. After I learned about personality theory, I said, okay, maybe they're a different personality. How can I best reach this person in their personality? Right? Which, of course, me being an F, thinking about other people, how can I accommodate them? Well, where T might say, okay, well, they need to learn how I do things, right? But so it's a little different. It's a nuance, but it's fantastic. It really opened up my possibilities for other people. I gave other people many more chances to show me who they are, rather than just immediately put them in a box and say, this is who they are based off of what we're asking for. So
it's a solution to help bridge the gap that comes from misunderstandings and disconnections. So it's a tool to help create connection where there would just be this gap
with other people, and also within ourselves, which brings us back to alignment.
Yes, absolutely. Say more about that. Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, the outer life, is what people see, what we put out there, what they see us at work, in our personal lives, when we're hanging out with people, our social lives and whatnot. The inner life is our thoughts, as you mentioned, our attitudes, our motivations, the value systems that we have, right? The things that are important to us. And if we don't have those in tune, we find ourselves in cognitive dissonance, right? Just
cognitive dissonance, yes.
Right, where we're moving one way outwardly, but inwardly we're like, oh, I don't really feel like I don't agree with that. So there's always a hesitancy. There's always a bit of it's like riding a bike downhill with your brake on. Right? You're not going as full speed as you can, because you always have that brake on just a little bit, right, holding back. And so really having those thoughts in alignment are about, okay, does this action I'm going to take, does it match my idea of who I am, who I want to be, my value system, the things that are important to me. Right? And you asked about how this affected you in my career. Right? So I've had done a lot of things. You've heard me expert and blah 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 blah. It's because I had a lot of different jobs, right? In college I worked in retail, and then I worked for the federal government, working at Air Force Base, and I worked for a county organization, right? In human services, and then I worked for a nonprofit for people with developmental disabilities, and I worked for a bank in their HR department, right? And all throughout, actually yesterday was my 15th year anniversary working for UC Davis. So I can't believe it's. Yeah, it's awesome. It also makes me feel very old, but because it's just flown by. But it's something that, working through all these different things, what I've recognized is that there's things that I can do, but there's things that I'm here to do.
Ooh, wait, I'm out. Let's just, I have to write this down.
Yeah.
There's things that I can do, but there's things that I'm here to do.
Right.
And how young are you again?
I'll be 50 this year. I'm 49.
Yeah. And I think that this is important, because when I wrote this, which was like 11, 12 years ago, even though I wrote it, I really was not, I wasn't able to be in alignment. I was still doing things that I can do,
Right.
not what I was here to do. And I'll be
Right.
43 tomorrow, and
Yeah.
I'm getting better, but I still find myself like, oh, I'm still earning my worth. I'm still performing. I'm still adapting, and I have my hand on that brake.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it's scary to kind of be like, I need to let go of the brake. And is my bike going to flip over? Is my life going to go upside down? Like, how do I say no to that business or that client or that whatever?
Yeah.
But
Or going out on your own and not having that security, right?
yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's talking about my career in that sense. It's, I know I can do office work. I've been a case manager, right? I've worked in offices. I've been a manager, supervisor. I've done some, I've worked in some really successful places and won awards and all these wonderful things. And I'm really good at office socialization, right? And having people come together and being, a team player and working together. I know I can do all those things, but I also know what I'm here to do, what my value system is, right? And that's through, I can make a difference. I want to make a difference, right? Wherever it is, whoever I'm engaging with, I want, to provide a positive impact, right? I want to engage others in providing their own positive impact. And I want to help initiate change. What are some things to think about? What are some steps to go through to help with that positive change process, right? And so those are just some of the things, I mean, if I'm thinking about my value system, right? It's about impact, independence, right? I'm sorry, I have that. Impact, independence, happiness, loyalty, and learning. So always wanting to get better, but also remembering where I came from, right? And so a lot of that stuff, I can see it. I can see it through just even, I learned a lesson my grandma used to tell me when I was a kid. She told me two things. She said, closed mouths don't get fed, which means speak up and advocate for yourself.
I tell my kids, ask and you shall receive.
Yeah. I've told my daughter that for a long time. But when she talked about closed mouths, not getting fed, I thought it was during meals. So I was, but I learned it all made sense to me. Advocate for yourself, speak up. We don't know what's wrong unless you tell us, right? And the second thing she used to say is never burn a bridge. And I didn't understand what that meant until I got into my career. The different clients that I have, I work for about 4 or 5 different clients. And I can tell you, every single one of them, except for one, I've worked full time for them at some capacity somewhere in my career.
Yeah.
And I'm still able to come back now as a consultant and work with them. So, not burning that bridge, not telling people exactly what you want to say on the way out the door. And I'm going to
or like,
do this,
you didn't appreciate me, so peace out. How's this place going to hold up now that I'm gone?
Right. You never know when you have to walk back over. Right. And so thinking about that, right. It's all about making a difference. I can hold my tongue because I know somewhere down the road, I may be able to provide that positive impact. I don't need to express myself that way, right? And I want to help others recognize what are some things that we can do, right? So talking about my career, having that job with the county, I remember my aunt, who's 95 years old now, when I first told her about the job when she was 80, you got a job with the county, you got retirement, you got benefits, you're set. You know how hard it is to get those jobs, right? She was all about that, right? But she also was born and raised in Louisiana on the Mississippi River, sleeping on a cotton barge. That's how she was raised. So security is everything for her, right? And so thinking about those folks, if I really, and I value security. I mean, I have a daughter, right? I was been raising her as a single dad since she was 5 years old, right? And so that security was really important for me, benefits and all those other things that I needed to be able to do to be that father. And I realized that I could do those, and I can do them well, fairly well, right? But the other things, they took a little bit more bravery, a little more stepping out, like you said, right? Taking that chance, worrying about it. Is this client going to work? Is this situation going to work? I'm going to be out there without a net, right? Yep. And so the last
risk.
Yeah. The last 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been one of those things where I've stepped out and, and working kind of for myself in that sense, right? But having different clients, working with UC Davis and Sac State and Mechanics Bank and Skill Path and a bunch of different places, that I'm not guaranteed work.
No.
I'm not guaranteed those benefits, right? And so it's scary. It's scary for somebody like me who's an S, who really is, based off of, okay.
DISC.
Yeah. Or in Myers-Briggs, right? As a sensor, right?
Oh,
So
okay. Sorry.
yeah. So, data is really important to me, my bank account, I pay attention to that, right? So that's something that's
Yeah.
really, stressful. And
Yeah.
so, but I also realized if I stay in where I can do, am I living to what I'm here to do? Right. And that's such a huge,
You gotta write a book.
so that's my next step. I was going to say what I'm here to do. What's further is writing, podcasting.
Yes.
Right.
Anchor. So I'm doing this on
Yeah.
Anchor.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I
great.
actually have a link. Another podcast I was on.
Yeah. Zoom and Anchor just.
Very cool. And, and just thinking about, increasing my coaching practice, right. And working on, I'm talking with working with Lori and Steve and them right now, just to get a certification, right. And those things, and even try like stand-up comedy. That's one of the scariest things for me, but I already perform. I'm a singer, but it's, singing is natural.
What don't you do?
I'm not a comedian, but I want to be.
I could see it. So what would you say, just, starting to land this plane on alignment, what would you say is your advice to yourself or others when you think about having alignment on our inner world and outer world? What's your advice to yourself and others?
Listen to and trust yourself. What are those things that excite you? When you think about them, they give you that little bit of buzz, right? They make you maybe want to lift your head or sit up a little straighter when you're thinking about those things, even if they're scary. Those things that you really, yeah, that would be wonderful, right? And also recognize how we're living. Are we living towards our inner life, or are we living towards our outer life? Those outer life things, they generally have motivations that are short-term, extrinsic. I have a great house. So I have to pay
safety
bills.
Versus internal safety.
Yeah. So I have, and those extrinsic values are those things that we have to do. We have to pay bills. We have to pay car payments, our kids' tuition, all the, benefits, healthcare, those things. If we're living towards those, are we truly fulfilled and satisfied? Right? As opposed to thinking, okay, so I can live towards those, or I can live towards the things that really I'm passionate about. And if I can find an avenue, an idea of how to do that. When I was working for the county, I saw UC Davis come out and, present training. And I said, I want to do that. And Gina Monroy, God bless her. I love her to death. I miss her every day. She was down there one time. I said, I want to do what you guys do. How do I do it? And she gave me the process. Right. And so I took that step. Right. And that was the first step. And so I'll always appreciate her for that, her and Larry Lobre. But there's a quote that I use when I talk about values and trainings. And it's from Todd Barnhart, who's he's an investor. Right. And he says, the first step to discover who you are is to discover what drives you. What are your needs and values? The way to inspire and motivate yourself is to chase that end value, the one that's really important to you. If you do, you'll be living your highest purpose, and you won't have to look for the money. It will find you. Right. And so as scary as it is to be out without a net, I have a friend who's a program director for Kern County Department of Human Services right now. He goes, when you left, we all thought, gosh, how courageous is that? And I said, that's funny. I was thinking, how crazy am I? So just taking that leap, it's scary, but, just thinking about how can I do this? What will I be able to do? And if we don't burn those bridges, if it doesn't work, guess what? We have people, we have goodwill, we have equity built up in those relationships where we can always land on our feet, especially if we're living passionate. Who's going to not want to hire somebody who's passionate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This was wonderful. So my takeaway is the whole concept of what I can do versus what I'm here to do. And I have it up here somewhere. Oh, so there's some new changes that I want to do within my my coaching firm, and it's scary. But I put, what are my motivators? And I put my children, my legacy, for me, meeting my maker, like when I go to God, when I want to be able to, when he goes, what did you do with the talents that I gave you? I want him to be able to say, wow, like you did great. You didn't bury them in the sand. There's a parable, about taking our talents and being like, well, I didn't want to like destroy them. So I buried them and I hid them. And he's like, no, use them.
Yeah.
And my other motivator are my current and my past clients. It's like, what you said just validates. I have it up on my board here. It's not about what I can do. It's what I am here to do. And then the last thing that I'm going to take away from, thank you so much for your time and contributing is just that, you use the words, listen to yourself. I think I even use those words in the book. And now I would even reframe it to say like, admit to ourselves, because it's like we don't have to take what we admit to ourselves as the irrevocable confession,
right?
But it's almost like it's the starting point. When we say that scary thing like, I want to quit my job or whatever it is, just admit it.
Yeah.
And then like sit with that, and wrestle with it and let it end up creating an authentic bridge. And it's funny, you have, the Golden Gate Bridge behind you, which I love because Rusty and I got married in Sausalito, and all of our wedding pictures, we've got the Golden Gate Bridge behind us. We had a artist, we consigned her, and she did a big canvas for our living room of the Golden Gate. But a bridge just is such a symbolic thing in my life, but it even connects with the inner life and the outer life, like confession, admitting, just being honest with ourselves. We're not
being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? Vulnerability. People talk about being vulnerable to other people. To be vulnerable with other people, we have to be vulnerable with ourselves first.
Yeah.
And it's really important to recognize, okay, these are the risks that I'm taking. If I'm not taking them, then am I, if I'm not taking them, can I speak to somebody else being my true self, right? Or am I portraying something that I'm not?
And when we don't, you said the perfect analogy. We're going down the hill on our bikes with the brake on, and we all know you put that front brake on and your bike is just going to tumble. So
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Carl, where can they find you? Do you have Instagram, Facebook, website, cell phone number? Like, people are going to want to reach you and have what you have. So
well, I guess probably the best, most developed site that I have is LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay.
Yeah,
What's
you can
LinkedIn?
Just my name, Carl Rabun, Rabun. I think Carl Rabun, Ph.D. So,
okay.
But I answer messages and I'll post things every now and then. I'm not as prolific as Miss Corry, but I will continue to work on that.
Well, we should chat on that because, maybe we can get some inspiration flying back and forth for things to share. So
absolutely,
we'll definitely have this to share. So we'll send it to you. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
To the conversation. Okay. So, you talked about writing your book 10 years ago and you having a different perspective now. A lot of people will think, oh, I'm not where I want to be. I'm frustrated. We get impatient, especially extroverts. You guys get really impatient, right? You don't think right? And so with the Myers-Briggs theory, what it says, in personality theory in general, is that we don't really truly understand and get comfortable with ourselves. I mean, they say somewhere in the mid 40s, early 50s, right? Some of us might have an old soul, right? We might be a little more self-aware, emotional intelligence, and those things when we're younger. But we're living under all these different pressures, right? As a child, we have pressures from our family, pressures from our teachers, from school, from all the organizations. As we get older, peer pressure, our significant others, right? And then our professors, our bosses. And then as we become parents, our pressures of who we want to be for our children. Right. And our
identity as a parent.
Right. And then that's an important thing, which you mentioned was, for your kids, the reason why you want to do things. I think it's really important to differentiate between what you do for your kids and who you want to be for your kids.
Yep.
Right. What you want to do for your kids, pay for tuition and all those different things. Those are motivations that are extrinsic, right? Because they can go away when you're done paying tuition or whatnot, then they're on their own. Who you want to be for your kids, what you want to pass down to them, their legacy, right? So I am, my dad always taught me you're always working hard, right? And you're always, looking for ways to improve yourself. That's something that stays with me, and it's not about what he paid for when I was a kid, right? So having that thought, but so all of those pressures start to go away when we reach a certain age, because we don't have other people that are depending on us, and we also we're at that age where we're seen as somebody who is some type of carries some weight or some expertise. So I guess the theory right around the mid 40s, early 50s is we stop caring what other people think about us, right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
we can really truly be in touch with ourselves and our motivations and those things. So if you haven't got it yet, don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, okay, now I have something to say. It's like my daughter's 20 and
so is mine.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's like one of the things that I find myself telling her often, I just go, you're exactly doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Because she's like, I should be this. And my peers at school are so, she hasn't gone to college yet. This is one of the things. She graduated in 2020, pandemic. And, and we encouraged her, we supported her of adult,
right?
There was other life circumstances, like there was other priorities, like health, emotional health, mental health. These other things are more important than just doing this path of society. And it's like, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I wished I knew what of course we always say this, but it's like, just be where you are.
Yeah.
Like in your 40s and 50s, then be like, okay, I don't care what other people think. It's like, like, oh, I care so much what other people think. Yes, that's what we do in our 20s,
Yeah.
Like, what can you learn from that?
I had the same conversation with my daughter. She came to me in tears like about a year ago. And I said, what? She goes, the way it looks right now with my classes, I talked to my counselor, I'm not going to finish in 4 years, Daddy. I said, okay, so why are we crying? Well, I wanted to finish, in 4 years like we're supposed to. I said, maybe it took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And I said, I worked and went to school, just like she is, she works part-time, she goes to school, she carries a full load, and I told her, I said, if you're working and going to school, when people say it's a 2-year degree in community college or 4-year degree in a university, add a year and a half, add 2 years to it.
Yeah.
And just recognize that life doesn't have to go by the way everyone else says it is, right? Who sets those standards anyway?
Exactly.
Whose standards are there that everybody has to get a 4-year degree?
Yeah.
Somebody may want to get a cosmetology license. Someone might want to be a mechanic. Someone might want to be a plumber or a welder and make more money than us, right? What standard told you that you are wrong for not finishing in 4 years? Not mine, right?
Hey,
and so
if we want to help the kids realize that standards change, just remind them that if you weren't married and having your first child by the time you were 14 years back, you were an old maid. So that's a good little reflection. So thank you, Carl. It's all about alignment, getting honest with our inner selves and matching up our outer world as best as we can to be in alignment. So today was week 20, and then next week, we're going to be on Things Happen For Us. So Monday Motivations, 52 Weeks to a More Purposeful You. Carl Rabun, Ph.D. on LinkedIn. And we'll make sure to put this in the notes so people can find you. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Corry. I appreciate it. And to everyone out there, please be well and be safe. And good luck with everything.
Thank you.